your servant. We thank you that you have given these women and men the will and the sense of duty to serve in the government of this municipality. It is a privilege to serve one's community, and with every privilege goes a responsibility. And may the sense of responsibility give them wisdom, determination, courage, sense of fairness in their deliberations. As council members and staff stand at the threshold of a new year, may the words of M.L. Haskins provide them with a clear pathway. I said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, "Give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown." And he replied, "Go into the darkness and put your hand in the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way." Amen.
Thank you very much. Councillor Body. We have the confirmation of our minutes from December the 17th. It's council's direction. Additional items. That would be, it's been a long holiday, hasn't it? Any additional items? Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I'd like to do a public thank you for the New Year's Eve event.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have three. One is a question about surplus land sales. The other is in reference to the information sheet that was prepared about the recreation agreement. And the third is about the preparation of an information sheet on taxing.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two items, one about a fundraiser coming up in a couple of weeks, and one a request for a report on the 2014 County Councillor election.
Any member of staff? Councillor Purdon.
One additional item about the state of our Georgian Bay water levels.
Members of council, members of staff. Mr. McRoberts.
Yes, Your Worship. I have one additional report regarding private rooftop solar projects.
Madam Clerk.
There is one additional bylaw this evening, bylaw 2013-015. It will be to declare surplus and permanently close a portion of City Lane Plan 184. This bylaw has been inserted, so since the agenda was published, the numbers after that have changed by one for bylaws. Thank you.
Okay. We are asking now for disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, confirmation of the minutes, please, from December 17th.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wright, that the minutes of the regular meeting of City Council held on December 17th, 2012, as printed, be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're now in Committee of the Whole. We do not have any public meetings this evening. We do, however, have a couple of deputations, and I'll invite our first deputation, if you could step forward to the podium, please. Pastor Dave Matthew of Crossroads Victory Church. Pastor Dave, yes. Can you give me leave for 10 seconds while I procedurally get my act together? Absolutely. Thank you. If I could have a resolution moving council in Committee of the Whole so we can bring you forward.
Worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wright, that the city now go into Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. We are now in Committee of the Whole. We now can invite Pastor Dave Matthew to please come forward and bring us your good news of the OSHARE and moving forward.
Thank you. Here it has gone. Just get this slideshow going here. Thank you for, here we go. Is that better? There we go. Thank you for having us here this evening. I have Reverend Keith Sweeting here, who can help me to field some questions afterwards, hopefully. The Owen Sound Hunger Relief effort has been working since 2011 in August, diligently trying to pull together the opportunity to provide supper meals for between 60 and 100, so it could be anywhere over that too as well. We really don't know until we get started. But let me just run through this presentation here. So every day, we know that there are people in our community that go without meals. We have several good service providers already providing several different types of meals, from the Union Place having their brunch program, as well as the kitchen table providing lunch. And so what we've done initially was we started with an evaluation and some consultation looking for where the greatest need was within the community. And that need presented itself in the evening meal where there was no supper meal provided. So we began to form a committee, and from there we formulated a vision and mission statement. I'll just read our vision statement. Demonstrating the love of Christ, Owen Sound Hunger Relief effort is determined to transform our community by overcoming hunger at every level and providing relief from the effects of poverty, one life at a time. Our mission statement, the Owen Sound Hunger and Relief effort will demonstrate the love of Christ by our determination to restore the dignity of all people without discrimination through meals that relieve hunger and renew hope, caring relationships that restore dignity to those experiencing the effects of poverty, community connections that foster networking to provide answers and meet needs, and advocating for the transformation of unjust structures that perpetuate poverty. So our process started with a public meeting in August of 2011, and gathering of local service providers, finding out that there were no evening meals being provided through a series of communication with those that were already providing meals, commissioned by our local Owen Sound. A response from the business community and 53% from individuals is what our current source of income has been up to this point. So it's very simple in what we're proposing to provide. One hot meal a day at supper time, Monday to Friday, initially, 60 to 80 people, 1,700 meals every month, estimated 20,800 meals annually. Our timeline is that we're advertising right now for staff positions. We're renovating the current space, small renovations that are going on this Saturday to get that location ready for providing these meals. Volunteer applications and training is happening partway through this week as well. Estimated 25 volunteers per week, five per day, in order to be successful in our endeavors. So we are hiring our director of operations by the end of this month, and part-time cook as well. So as far as volunteers are concerned, we're encouraging volunteers from all cross-section of our community. Teams of volunteers, we've had those from different backgrounds saying, can we volunteer as a group? And the answer was certainly they can. That there is an application process and training, orientation that is done to make sure that that there's proper food handling considerations according to the health unit, etc. How to make sure that there's some thought to crisis intervention. Those types of things are being thought through as well. And we're also just wanted to make mention of a joint fundraiser that we're having as well. This is the actual launch is February the 14th. and we're calling it Having a Heart for the Hungry. We're had confirmation, hopefully that still is able to follow through with Mayor Haswell serving the first meal along with Chief of Police Bill Sornberger. This is the fundraising event that's coming up. We're excited about it because it's a joint fundraiser with, it says 5 here, there's actually one more. The Y Housing is going to be a part of receiving the benefit of this fundraiser as well. Very simple fundraiser. It's just through pledge forms. March the 1st and 2nd, just walking or it's called Marching Together. And so we're just encouraging all local businesses, faith communities, schools, senior groups, and individuals, mayors, council members as well. You can be involved. If you form a team, that would be great. To march for 5 kilometers. It can be done indoors at the Bay Shore or outdoors on the 2nd. I think it's between 3 and 5 or something like that in the afternoon. The United Way, Safe and Sound, VLC, Salvation Army, O'Share, and Y Housing are the beneficiaries of that fundraiser that's coming up for it. So thank you for your time this evening. Is there any questions that you have for us?
Thank you very much, Pastor Dave, and I'll just turn to council and ask if any member of council has any question or comments for the gentleman here this evening. Welcome, Reverend Sweeting. No comments or questions, and I can tell you on behalf of council, thank you so much for bringing this information to us. Thank you for all your hard work that you're doing in the community. There are so many needy and wanting folks in our community, and so many of these programs that are needed don't receive funding from any level of government, and you're certainly filling a huge void. So I thank you, and I encourage members of council to come out on the 14th and help me serve, and maybe I'll serve you as well.
One of the things that Dave mentioned was the putting together teams for the march together. And so I would encourage, perhaps even challenge the council to put together a team and to walk together to raise funds for all of the groups that are represented. So I would strongly encourage that.
That's great, and I have to say to council and to those watching that I had the good fortune of spending a day with both Reverend Sweeting and Reverend Matthew and a number of other folks, Barb Fady from the county and so on, and we had a road trip, and on that road trip we met with Steve Giuliano and his community of Woodstock, and had an incredibly informative day. Both for me and for us to travel together as a group and learn more about each other and what we were wanting to see happen positively in our community. So I have to say, on behalf of the city, congratulations to you and pulling together and working collaboratively. I think your motto at the end here certainly is so true, because together we can make a difference, and truer words have never been spoken. So I thank you so much. We'll see you on the 14th. Okay. We have a second deputation, and I'll invite Mr. Cottrill and another fellow we recognize at the back there, Mr. Hibma, to come up to the podium. And we have the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority presentation of the 2013 draft budget. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council and city staff. Pleasure to be here once again. It just looks different from what I'm used to. I'm sure. Anyway, I'm looking forward to your return to your normal quarters at some point in time. I understand that'll be a little while yet. But anyway, to begin this evening, I would like to extend you the best wishes for 2013. John's going to go through some of the details that shouldn't be too painful for you. Last year has been, as always, a challenge to continue to do all that we need to do. one of the things that did come up last year that I'm very mindful of in my role, not only as chair here at Grey Sauble, but chair of the Provincial Association, is the plans that the Minister of Natural Resources announced in June of last year to transform the Ministry of Natural Resources because of its chronic deficit budget. So that left us facing a very uncertain future in terms of what that transformation would be. We have been trying to get audiences with various provincial people at the ministry level, the deputy ministers and so on. And as you can appreciate, since the recessing of the provincial parliament and the leadership race that's going on and so on, finding these people available for a meeting is exceedingly difficult, so we're not making much headway. That said, there will be significant change within the MNR in this coming year and years ahead, and we know very well that that's going to impact how we do some of the things that we do at the Conservation Authority. We will be looking to engage you as our member municipalities to work with the provincial government in perhaps redefining what the various roles and responsibilities are going to be in terms of managing our natural resources on a watershed basis, on a province-wide basis. So you have received a white paper that was prepared by Conservation Ontario, and we would look forward to an opportunity to come back and discuss that more fulsomely with you in the not-too-distant future. Once things settle down at Queen's Park, we can perhaps move forward on that. The other thing, I just picked up on the comment by Councillor Purdon that you wanted to have some initial discussion about the lake levels, and I would just offer that I've been involved in the Upper Great Lakes study on the water levels and continue at this point in time on a task team that the IJC has established to move forward an effort to develop an adaptive management process where we don't look at it every 15 years or so, but actually continue to develop the science, continue the monitoring, and work collaboratively with all of the interest groups around the Great Lakes to make sure we're not undoing what someone else is doing and make sure what we're doing is feasible and reasonable in the long term. So I can provide information for you and linkages and so on. So if you want, at any time, give me a call, and I can provide information if you want, and perhaps be of some assistance in that regard. At this point, I'll turn it over to John for the presentation, and then we'll answer questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council and staff. I have Heather Greenfield here with me. She's going to, from our forestry department, she's going to help me with the technical side of the presentations. Okay, we should start. I want to give you a bit of an overview of how we're funded. The authority seeks revenue from a variety of sources. We do get grants in the neighborhood of about 10% of our money. We have user fees, planning fees, reservation fees, gate fees, that sort of thing. That works out to about 12% of our money. Our forestry department is quite large. We plant about 300,000 trees a year. We harvest about 600 acres of land a year, and that brings us about 31% of our revenues. We also have our general levy, and that's why we're here today, to seek your support in terms of providing that levy to us through our member municipalities. This year that will be about 43% of our revenues. In terms of our revenue split, the forestry department should generate about 31% of our money. The matching and non-matching levies will be about 43%. So that really gives you a breakdown. Note that the M&R portion of the money is 7%. So we only get 7% of our money directly from Ministry of Natural Resources to undertake our programs. Okay. In terms of expenses, our forestry department is about 31% of our costs. Environmental planning is 11%. Capital expenditures about 16%. Our conservation properties, we have 28,000 acres altogether. To manage those properties costs us about 17% of our resources. Information and education is about 6%. Water management is about 8%. I'd just like to highlight capital projects. In terms of the City of Owen Sound, the mill dam is something that we've been studying for a number of years. In 2011, we undertook a detailed study of that structure and identified some problems below the water lines of the gates. We plan to do some repairs this year. Unfortunately, we did not receive capital funding from the Ministry of Natural Resources. As part of their restructuring, they reduced the amount of money available for capital projects from $5 million to $2.5 million for the entire province. So our project did not make the list this year. We will apply again for next year, and hopefully we'll have the resources available to do the work next year. Part two of the story, this fall we found some minor slumping around the west side of the structure near the parking lot. And so we'll be doing some preliminary investigations this spring to determine what the cause of that problem is and how extensive that is. And that may require some repairs in future years as well. So that's just a heads up to you that there may be some additional costs in future years to maintain that structure within the city. Yeah, I assume you all have copies of the budget document itself. I'll just take a couple of minutes to highlight what's in that. We tried very hard this year to keep the budget increases to a minimum, and we feel quite proud that we were able to keep the budget to a 3% increase. And the majority of that increases is related to salaries, wages, and benefits, with some increases to other costs like fuel, and unfortunately we pay taxes as well, so we're seeing some tax increases as well. In terms of service contracts, those are things like grass cutting contracts, staff that are there on contract basis. Those costs are going up as well, so that's where we're seeing some increases as well. This year we're highlighting staff development costs. We're bringing those out in the open. I'm really a firm believer that we keep our staff well trained, and so I want to get a really good handle on what our staff development costs are. So we're highlighting those this year. That's a new item in the budget, and it'll give me a good indication of what we're spending on that, and I want to make sure that our staff continue to be up to speed on any new initiatives that are within their purview. In terms of capital expenditures, because of the reduction in grants from M&R, and we're asking for less money from the province this year, and we're hopeful that we'll be successful in getting money to do repairs both at the Owen Sound Mill Dam and to the retaining wall at Ingles Falls. So those are the two capital projects we're looking at to undertake this year. We also are looking at a couple of vehicle purchases as well. Those dam repairs and vehicle purchases come out of reserve, so those are something that are not affected by the levy, but they are capital expenditures to us. So in summary, we're looking at a 3% increase. If you go to the last page, you see that the increase in dollar amounts is slightly over $6,000 to your city. So we're looking for your support to this budget, and we'll be meeting on Wednesday afternoon to deal with the budget, and we're hopeful that you'll find it in your abilities to support that budget. Any questions?
I'm sure there will be. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for all the work that is done at the Conservation Authority. It's, I know from my days sitting on the Conservation Authority board, it's yet again another publicly funded sort of organization that is struggling under incredible pressures to provide service, and the funding just isn't there to do so. So I appreciate the work that you do. Members of Council, Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question for Mr. Cottrill. The mill dam repairs, so in this budget you have $200,000. Is that the minor cracking you were talking about for 2012 that didn't move forward?
Yes.
So that 200,000 is just for minor repairs?
I wouldn't consider it minor. It's fairly major. It's the reason, part of the reason for the high cost is it's work below the water level. So we'll have to build a temporary coffer dam. We have to do the work in the fall once we do the fall drawdown. So there's extra costs in just getting ready to do the work. And then once we're there and dewater the site, we're really not 100% sure how extensive the damage is. And so we set the budget at 200,000. If we're optimistic, it may be something that's only going to cost 100,000 or 150, but we just put a bit of extra money there just in case there's more damage than we initially thought. We did take a look at it underwater. We used underwater cameras and did have a good idea of what the extent of the problem is. But until you start breaking away at the damage work, you're really not sure what the extent of the damage is.
So, but that was my question. The 200,000 is the full repair?
Yes.
Okay. And am I reading this right? 107 of that is funded by the ministry, or hopefully funded by the ministry?
That's right. The WECI, the Water and Erosion Control Infrastructure Program, is a 50-50 grant program. So half the money would come out of our dam reserves, and half the money would be provincial money.
Well, I guess we look forward to whenever it is. Mr. Hibma just commented when the provincial government gets back. See how that goes. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. If I could, through you, please, to Mr. Cottrill. And first of all, I want to say thank you for the job you do. I know that the city and the county both work very closely with the Conservation Authority. I've got a notice from you not too long ago that you had hired 2 new planners and you were making an introduction. Could you please tell me what those 2 new planners were hired for, what type of job they're going to be doing for conservation?
We had 2 planners leave for other jobs, so these are replacement
These are replacement planners.
Yeah, so it's not additional staff, it's just replacement staff. They have 2 major functions. They do all the plan review work, so the municipalities send us development applications, so we do review those applications in conjunction with other agencies to make sure that the flooding erosion issues are properly dealt with in terms of new development. We also issue permits ourselves for work within floodplains. If people are developing within our area of jurisdiction, permits are required for that. So staff hire or handle the permit applications as well.
Right. Thank you. That's right.
Councillor Boddy.
Thank you. Excuse me while I toot the horn of the Conservation Authority. I've been sitting out there this past year as one of the representatives, and of course Mr. Hibma is our other city representative, for those who don't know. Mr. Hibma, you also do what other things with regard to Conservation Authority?
I chair the Provincial Association as well, and providing service right now to the International Joint Commission on the subcommittee.
So as a local Conservation Authority, we have some big clout in the province, obviously. In the fall and September, we had 2 full days. It was a biennial conference that all the conservation authorities came in from all over the province to visit us and our neighboring Saugeen Conservation Authority. It was interesting to see the respect that they all have for our organization locally, or 2 organizations locally, for the forestry and the lands that we have amassed over the last 30, 50 years, and our water courses. We have a good conservation authority, and it is highly respected around the province. Given that we're picking new committees tonight, I probably shouldn't be tooting it too much. For the rest of you, it isn't a committee you want to sit on. Not at all. It's thanks.
I enjoyed it.
Any further questions or discussion? Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, former Councillor Hibma mentioned the Great Lakes the International Joint Commission. And one of the things, as you know, I attended some meetings, and they decided that nothing was what they should do, basically, except monitor it. And we've been monitoring it and watching it go down. And if you go out to the shoreline around Owen Sound and in the harbor, you see how dramatically it's impacting on us. The next thing will be we won't be able to get ships into the harbor. And with all due respect, it's time for action, not monitoring, because what we've been doing is watching the life drain out of the Great Lakes, and the upper lakes. The lower lakes aren't having these kind of problems. But there was good evidence that was presented that the amount of water going through Lake St. Clair has increased, and the St. Clair River, significantly. And I'm hoping that we're going to see, rather than pontifications about observing the situation, action plans. There were some action plans suggested by the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers, I believe, for the use of caissons that could be sunk in and would still allow ships to pass but would stop the erosion. And my question is, why didn't they look at that, realizing the water levels are going to continue to decline?
If you'll permit it, Your Worship, I will try to address some of that. The Upper Great Lakes study was underway for a period of about 5 years, wrapped up last year in March. At which
Is there one left there?
Okay. Number 8.
Might as well just go by this.
Finance, and I'll take my buy.
Finance full?
Number 1.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did that. Number 7.
Community planning?
Number 6.
I'll take culture. I'm sorry, can I change that? There's another committee I wanted to be on. Accessibility.
Number 5.
Planning.
Number 4.
Rexon Park? Is that full?
It's full.
Okay, and I will go to falls prevention.
Number 3.
finance is full, right?
Red indicates full. Yep.
Finances. That's Phil's finance.
Accessibility.
2. Not going anywhere.
Let's look at the screen, it shows you.
Oh, sorry.
Here, right
This
here.
one right here. Oh, well,
If it's not red, there are still spots available.
it's not red, there's still, oh, cultural advisory.
Number 1?
Community planning filled? Oh, there it is. Okay, okay, that's family physician festival night. Fire services. And I'll go on the community, I'll go on the family physician recruitment. I don't think there's a lot going on there.
Oh, good stuff.
Number 2.
Fire, Services.
Number 3.
Festival of Northern Lights.
Number 4.
Fire Services.
For an election by mail in 2014. I didn't change any of the rubric around that, took the numbers that exist right now and just added inflation numbers. We then also looked at internet voting, voting by phone, and vote by mail. Internet voting and vote by phone tend to be done in conjunction with each other. I haven't seen any place that's done a vote by phone in and of itself. It always accompanies another method. And internet voting, have heard some very challenging stories around servers being overloaded and people not being able to get their votes in on time. I do believe in the future that that technology will grow and develop. I'm not sure at this time that it's the right way for Owen Sound to go. Also, in speaking to some of the providers around internet voting, they did indicate that in order to do it well, you really wanted to have a strong and time-intensive commitment from your IT department. And I am aware that there are a number of other major projects that the IT department is dealing with right now. So looking at something that dealt well with the labor we have available, knowing that the Corporate Services Department has been dissolved and at least one of those positions no longer exists, so we're down one staff member. Looking at trying to find something that's efficient for us in terms of the amount of work that needs to be done and also the amount of cost to the municipality. Found that vote by mail seemed to be the method that hit on, if you were doing a rating system, on the factors we were looking at seemed to be the highest. Found interesting things like all the municipalities that have gone to vote by mail have either stayed with vote by mail or progressed on to something more electronic like the internet. Nobody has gone back to
in the
paper.
world for running fair, open, honest elections. Elections Canada has not found a way to have a secure list of electors with a strong level of integrity. And when I talk about integrity, I mean that the list is accurate. That would allow for the unsolicited mailing of ballots to individuals. You can vote by mail by special ballot in a federal election, but you have to actually request the ballot and provide documentation to prove your address, your age, and your citizenship. There's, in the past municipal elections, the voters list that's prepared generates a voter registration card that goes to every elector that says you're on the list and you're registered to vote at this polling site. And that's a test of the list that allows people who, because there's a lot of publicity around that, allows people who don't get a card to add themselves to the list. And it also allows people who, card comes to my house, but it's to a previous tenant, it allows for some opportunity to correct that. A vote by mail system, if I move out of my house 6 or 8 weeks before the election, the new tenant is going to get my ballot and there's no test to prove who actually cast my ballot. While we're moving towards a less secure system of elections municipally, and I understand the pressures that are there, but while we're moving to a less secure system by going to mailing a ballot to everybody whose name appears on the list with no test for citizenship, Elections Ontario and Elections Canada have gone the other way. And in the last 2 federal elections, not only do you go and vote in person, but for the last 2 elections, you need also to provide identification and proof of residence. That didn't used to be the case. So I
I have real difficulty in a report like this coming forward this quickly and expecting a decision to be made tonight, particularly with the concerns that have not been even acknowledged, alone addressed, around the integrity of the voters list. I think there's potential for some serious problems, and I think all of us need to understand a lot more fully how this can work. The need to vote by mail arose in municipalities that have high seasonal populations because proxy voting and special ballot voting weren't available for, locally municipalities like Blue Mountains.
Whether they're on the voters list, whereas if you don't get your voter card, you don't know what polling station to go to, and you tend to use that as an obstacle to get out to the polls. Another thing that people have suggested is that because with traditional polling stations, they're all over the city and you're not sure where to get that information, with a vote-by-mail system, there is one central location that you go to get on the voters list. So if you arrive and indicate that you're not sure where your ballot is, your ballot that originally existed is computer decrypted so that the replacement ballot that you get is the only one that can be voted with. So if Councillor Twaddle, for example, came to vote and somebody had stolen his ballot, we would tell him the system considers him already to have voted, and then we would launch an investigation into that fraud. We have had research done by a number of municipalities to see if there is extensive fraud, and the result has been that there's not. And it is my apology to Council that I overlooked putting that in the report. Because the software exists for the City of Owen Sound, I thought that was something Council was already aware of, so I apologize for that. I'm happy to write a follow-up report on the integrity, but the dramatic increases in many cases on voter turnout and the investigations that have been done that haven't turned up fraud suggests that overall the process has been working for the municipalities who have adopted it.
To go to Ms. Corsi and then Councillor Lemon. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's no question that the voters list is a challenge. It's a challenge in every election. If you ever want to see MPAC complete a failure, it's in putting a voter list together. We've had the benefit in the past of having knowledgeable staff who could go through that voters list and identify where there are changes and cleansing that needs to happen. We've done the other. My suggestion this evening is it's very critical to staff to listen to your comments, and if you have any discomfort in approving this tonight or not approving it, I suppose, let's get all of your questions so that we can come back with a comprehensive reply to those questions. So I would encourage you all to get those questions out this evening. We have time to answer your questions to the best of our ability to allow you to make as informed a decision as you can on this very critical question.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Lemon.
Well, this is a radical departure from the traditional method, but many, many years ago they made the radical departure of going to ballots from public meetings. And I'm sure that there was some concern about that as well. Will this system be perfect? No. Is our current system perfect? No. I would like to know the information that the clerk could get us on irregularities, et cetera, and any issues that have been in that area. But on the other hand, it's also going to increase the accessibility of people who are housebound to be able to vote, to people who have motor skill issues to be able to vote. And in some areas where they've gone to this, people who are absentee property owners, people who live in Toronto but may own a tract of land in Owen Sound, would then be able to vote, which a lot easier if it's vote by mail than if it is just by going in and casting your ballot. I think it's something we have to consider for a number of reasons. And part of it is coming down the pike in terms of the accessibility. A lot of us can remember in the old days in elections where some of the polls were that you had to have the physique of a 20-year-old and a gazelle to get up the stairs to try and get in and vote in a very small living room. Now we've improved it, but the number of places where you can vote is limited. And in some cases, residents in Owen Sound are required to go a fair distance. I'm thinking out in Brook as one example, around the 28th Street apartments. I think the people there have to go a fair distance in order to vote. And so I want to look at it more. I think this is an excellent report. It's a very bold report, and it's extremely well done. And I think that if councillors have concerns about security, et cetera, those are valid concerns. And if we could have a follow-up report with that and continue the discussion on this, I think that would be a good idea.
Councillor Purdon.
Just in regards to Councillor Twaddle's remarks about mail voting being implemented to address in more rural communities or communities where there's seasonal property owners, have we examples of other communities like ours, small urban communities where mail vote systems are in place, and any reports? You don't have to answer this question right now, but I think that would be good to know. I would certainly appreciate more information about that. I see Hanover's in the list, or Town of Blue Mountains, but we're a little bit bigger than both of those communities. So other examples and any issues or concerns that have arisen if those larger, small urban communities have implemented mail voting.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I think it's a great report. We should always be challenged to look at new ideas. So I do also have some unease with this, and I struggle with the unease. Is that just because I'm familiar with the way we've always done it, and why would we bother changing it? Because we've always done it that way. So I struggle. The city manager's comments, I think, are good. Let's get the questions out. One of the important points that wasn't raised is, what does the public think? You know, I'd like to hear feedback from people as to what are their views on this. Because I mean, there's certainly some positives to it. We've heard some possible negatives too. Most of the examples in the report talk about our rural municipalities, not all of them, Hanover being one of the exceptions, rural municipalities with wide geographic areas and lots of non-residents or seasonal residents, whatever we call them. So I too would be interested in small urbans like ourselves, you know, the Stratfords, Orangevilles of the world. Even though there are some small urbans, but they were amalgamated and they're large geographic areas. I'm talking more about small towns, I guess, like Owen Sound. So I'd like to hear more about that. The security issue, of course, is big and gives us a chance to hear from the public. So I'd move that we table this report, if that's correct, and ask for a further staff update on some of the issues that have been raised.
Okay.
Appropriate wording, but
I think we're quite clear on that. So to the tabling motion, all those in favor? Opposed?
Worship. We have an opportunity to comment on the appropriateness.
We do. We do. I stand corrected. We do have an opportunity, and I have a number of speakers still waiting.
That's right.
Councillor Body.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. I was just going to ask what our deadline is to make this decision. Yeah.
Madam Clerk.
Because this is new to me, I have started very early. You have the opportunity as the public to put your nominations in to begin campaigning on January 1st, 2014. So we have a year. I will spend 2013 producing the policies and procedures that are needed to implement the election of our choice. So my preference is to bring this forward early and decide what type of election council would like to see, so that I can begin pursuing that with time on my side.
Councillor Boddy?
My second question, I'm wondering if council gets to the decision that they don't want to change the voting system, they still want to have polls, is there any efficiency to having polls, bringing the votes in, and still using tabulators as a hybrid, just to throw that out as a thought? Thanks.
Councillor Twaddle?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would have made that motion to table, but I wanted to make sure that other comments and questions were raised. I wasn't aware of the software that the clerk made a reference to. Is that being used currently?
It is.
But that's not fed back to MPAC?
It's fed back to the company that would produce the ballots for us if we chose to vote by mail. They take the impact data and the municipal voter view data and create a vote by mail list for mail.
Okay, but so that happens once sometime
From impact has been generated.
for the next election? Already? The voters list for the 2014 election, which is 22 months away, has already been produced? No.
Apologies, I think I jumped.
No, okay, yeah.
No. MPAC will produce that, I believe it's June of 2014, and at that time, that information will then be updated with our debt information.
Do a proper report. These are the questions that I'm raising.
Fair enough, and unless there's any desire for Councillor McManaman to withdraw his motion, I did recognize it at the time that he put forward the motion as is custom.
I appreciate that. I thought there was a real interest in getting the questions on the table so the next report would be appropriate and we don't go through this a second time. But if you want to call the vote, that's fine.
Councillor McManaman.
Worship, certainly I had thought all the questions were out. If they're not, I would be happy to withdraw the motion.
Well, we'll just do that. Carry on with questions, Councillor Twaddle.
Well, that was my other question is what is the process for people who live in retirement facilities, long-term care facilities, people who do not have addresses, but who are still residents of the city and have an entitlement to vote, or may have an entitlement to vote. Those are issues that have been addressed by federal and provincial jurisdictions. I'm not sure that they are issues that can be addressed by MPAC producing a voters list. And those are the concerns I have around vote by mail, as I said, the integrity of the voters list and the ability to ensure that the person who fills out a ballot is in fact the person who it was intended for, if the ballot goes to someone else. And then I want to ask the clerk what she meant by, if I go in to vote and somebody's already used my ballot, you would launch an investigation. But if I show up to vote on election day, like how long is that investigation going to take? Do you have any sense of what that involves, or do I lose my right to vote?
As I understand, when the envelopes go out, there are instructions on the envelopes that indicate what needs to be done. And inside the envelope is a statutory declaration form that the voter would need to fill out. And this is the same form that you would fill out if you were going to a polling ballot. When that ballot comes back, so people that are filling out ballots know that their declaration is being checked by somebody and that there would be follow-up if there was a problem. As I understand it, when...
Councillor Boddy, did you?
No.
Okay. Councillor McManaman. I'm sorry.
Motion to table the report and ask for a further report from the city clerk on the issues raised.
That seems like good timing. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. That motion is carried. Thank you for the report. It was a good discussion, and we'll look forward to future discussion on this item. We are now at item 12B6, the report from the clerk. B7. God. What?
Just the Where the blue is.
The report on, oh yeah, it's very difficult. We're going to talk about this. This is the Sowerby Doherty report. Councillor Body.
I move the recommendation that the clerk and the mayor enter into an agreement to sell the lane that we've been discussing selling for several weeks, and that the lane be declared as surplus to the needs of the municipality.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have a report about a dump truck. Councillor McManaman. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had your hand up. Councillor Dare is over that way.
I'll move the recommendation about the dump truck, Your Worship.
Thank you. And that would be to purchase a 2012-2013 GVW conventional cab and chassis, complete with over-center aerial device, chip box, and utility cabins.
Do you know what that means?
Absolutely. Councillor Purdon.
I'd move that we get one of those.
With a wheel lug
We
wrench.
are already moved, but I'm glad that you support this. And the lowest bid? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It was moved by Councillor McManaman. Or Councillor Adair, I'm sorry.
The one that the mayor just spoke of.
Just trying to move the meeting along. There we go. Thank you, Council. Councillor Purdon.
Just in the interest of clarification, I thought we were already at the chipper.
It's, I'm going to personally put myself into the chipper.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I'll probably get some assistance, I'm sure. But. Okay, what report are we at now, Madam Clerk?
Councillor Adair has moved the chipper, and if we could vote on that.
Let's do that. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Chipping will continue. And our next report, I'm completely lost on this agenda. Thank you. What is Council's direction? Tall ships update. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Worship. I'll
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Those all-encompassing motion was passed. We are at minutes of boards and committees for approval. Councillor Lemon.
I would move a 12C 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, discussion. Councillor Purdon.
In terms of the 12C5 Economic Development Tourism Advisory Committee meeting on December the 5th, it says there that the issue of the Twin City with Dai County and China would be coming to council, which hasn't happened. I understood from our last meeting that it was that issue was going to that committee for review, and I just wanted to bring forward some additional information on that file. That it was in November that we received the actual correspondence from Dai County in China, the city, with the memorandum that they sent as well. I'm sure, and I know from conversations with the Wilmots who are in touch directly with that community that they're wondering what's happening with that letter and that proposal that they made to be a sister city with the city of Owen Sound. So I would I would like to see some action, or at least a timeline for our deliberations. I think at our last meeting, we talked about looking at other Chinese communities that might better fit ours, or another broad conversation, which I think we, in terms of just our response to Dai, we should have a timeline, and I'd urge that committee to provide that. I'm not sure what was meant in the minutes, that it was coming to council.
I'm going to go to the city manager for a response on this. I know that there is work being done on a report. I'm not sure where that's at.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Purdon. It's certainly possible these minutes should be corrected. I'd have to look into that further. I would like to have that further discussion at the Economic Development Committee level so that we could formulate a plan and a timeline. Certainly that was my suggestion to Councillor Chamberlain, that we consider sending it back to the Economic Development Committee for that further discussion and a timeline.
Thank you very much for that. And just for the Economic Committees to consider that in terms of sistering initiatives, I had a look at Wikipedia, and it has a list of all the sister cities in Canada with differing, and often they have more than one city in China sistering with municipalities. So I would just encourage, if we have an opportunity with Dai and it meets our needs, that we don't have to decide on others as well.
Any further discussion on any of the minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We now have, other business. Oh, in-camera minutes, sorry. We have in-camera minutes for approval. Council direction. Councillor Purdon.
Approval of the in-camera minutes.
Okay. Discussion. All those in favor? It's passed. We now are at other business. Councillor Chamberlain.
Oh, do I remember, do I stand up for this? No. Well, I would like to just say a big thank you to the staff of the city, the staff of the Y, and all of the volunteers that put together the event for our New Year's Eve event that was held at the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center. Very good attendance. I also noted that there was a lot of people use the Grilled in Action food truck, and there were comments made to me that maybe that's what we have to do in the short term if we haven't got a food vending place there. We're working on that, I know. But what I wanted to say is that I know that it's not easy for a lot of people to work on New Year's Eve, and they were to be thanked because it was really well done.
Indeed, it was a very, very well-attended event. Lots of tremendously positive feedback from that night. Lots of people had lots of fun. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Worship. Last year, we hired a consultant to sort of put together all of the surplus land that the city has, identify any issues with that land, and we began tentatively to move forward with the sale of surplus land. And I'm just wondering who within the city, or what department and or committee is responsible for selling off that surplus land. I would really like to see us continue on that, and I would hate for us to end up like we did with parking without anyone actually doing it, and 4 years from now having to go back and do it all over again.
City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the question, Councillor Adair. It has been referred to the Economic Development Manager, and Steve and I have had preliminary discussions on how we are going to proceed. We have no intention of letting this die, if you will, and we're going to prioritize with the committee and move forward in a timely manner.
Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you to Councillor Adair for raising that. Early on, there were some properties offered and then removed from the list because there were some servicing issues around that. And I've been approached by one individual who just wonders if those properties might somehow come back on the market. And it seemed to me that perhaps one way to approach that would be to get a better estimate of the cost of relocating the services so that we could get a real sense of the value of the property. And if the property is only going to sit idle because there's a service underneath it, there might be an argument for relocating the service and selling the property, even though there might be a minimal net financial gain on the sale of the property. There would then be a property that would generate taxes and be an infill lot on into the future. So just ask that that be part of what you're going to address. Thank you.
City Manager.
Absolutely. We will get a firmer estimate on that, and I totally agree, Councillor, that even if it comes out to a sum zero, it's still an advantage to the city to get those properties onto the tax roll.
Councillor Adair.
That's certainly my concern. Is I want to get rid of, I guess I want these properties to be for sale, maybe not on sale, but certainly for sale. And I'm glad to hear that so it would be the Economic Development Committee that would be...
It's certainly the Economic Development Manager that is supposed to get these moved forward, and it would make some sense then to bring them through the Economic Development Committee as required when there is a further decision required of council.
Okay, thank you. That was my first
Number
one.
one item.
What?
You had two others, I believe.
I did, and they're sort of linked. I have to say that I'm very pleased with the report that staff put together about the facts around the rec agreement and the rec charges that are coming forward. I know we have distributed that through Facebook on the website. We put things up at the rec center and at the Bayshore. I'm wondering, though, if perhaps taking almost that identical thing in color and putting that into the local newspaper, if that wouldn't also be wise. Not, I know everyone says, well, not everyone reads the paper, but not everyone is on Facebook or online as well. I do know that the city has some issues around communicating our point of view and what we're doing out to the public, and certainly we've used quite a few different avenues for this, and I guess I will put it out that I will move that we use that document as the basis for an ad in the Owen Sound Sun-Times.
Okay. To the City Manager.
Have to ask where we would take the budget to do that from.
I was going to ask, do we have a budget for
that?
that, but I was hoping that we...
We do not have an assigned budget, and I just, if I could, for one moment, we're pleased to do those types of things, and I thought it turned out well. I can tell you it probably took close to 20 hours of staff time when you combine everyone's efforts to do that, so there is a cost to doing that type of communication. It gets easier as you move forward, but I just wanted council to be aware that it does consume a significant amount of staff time to do that, but I think it is absolutely the way to go. But I just wanted to make that point. And on the other one, I think it should be a very discreet decision once you know the cost of putting a color ad of that size, readable size in the paper. You need to know what that cost would be.
Flyer distribution may be a cheaper way to go, but...
I'm just putting that out there to council. I know we've used social media and you know, actually on the doors, but I'm wondering if we've hit all the points that we we need to hit, or maybe it's time we moved on from that issue completely and got about our own business. I'm not, so I'm putting that out there.
A couple more people would like to speak to the motion. City Manager, were those your comments?
To rain on the parade at all,
I have an umbrella.
Balance the budget.
Sure. Councillor Twaddle?
Thank you, Your Worship. I thought it was an excellent document. I was pleased to see it. We had some discussion at the Rec and Parks Committee meeting last week, and one point that I made there, and is something I believe firmly in, we need, as a city, to explain our own decisions. We really need to make it clear that what's happened with the rec agreement was not the city's decision. And every time we explain it, we seem to be defending our position. And my view, when I'm asked about it, I tell people I don't understand it. The cost was $14.88 in total per household for Georgian Bluffs, $5 and change in total for Meaford. Ask them why they turned it down. We didn't. And so I think we need to have a balance between explaining the offer we put forward and somehow defending a decision that really wasn't ours but was a neighbor's. And I agree with the city manager that the cost of putting a full color ad that size in the Sun-Times would pay the non-resident fee for several minor sports participants. It would not be inexpensive by any stretch.
Councillor Purdon.
I think my comments are similar to Councillor Twaddle's, is that if this kind of communication would make the citizens of Georgian Bluffs and Meaford more aware of a great opportunity to be part of a rec agreement with the city, I think that would be important. I think, and also just reflecting on the idea of the cost of communication, there is a cost to communication. I think communicating with our public and the public in general in our community is really important, and maybe we need to think about that in budget process as well, that we should have the funding we need to communicate clearly and well with our citizens, and that we could easily make these types of decisions. But given all of that, I think a full color page ad in the newspaper is not the approach that I would take for the cost, the overall cost, and also who are we talking to.
City Clerk wants to jump in here. Oh, I'm sorry, City Manager.
Just to advise council that we will be advertising in the paper, the newspaper, regarding minor sports registration, and we were going to make some reference to the non-resident fee in that. It wouldn't be the full description, but it would be in there, if that's of help.
And at the minor sports registration, which is next month, we will have copies of
Absolutely.
those to give out to anyone who, to all the people who ask. I was going to say anyone who might ask, but to all the people who will ask when they come down. Okay.
Councillor Chamberlain and Councillor Lemon.
I'm sorry, I don't think I have.
You're no? Okay.
I think I've done my...
Councillor Lemon.
Well, I've had several people from Owen Sound asking why we cut off the Georgian Bluffs, and my response was very simply, because your taxes shouldn't be subsidizing people in another municipality. And he said, we don't. I said, well, under what we're trying to do is create a sense of equity. And that's what it's all about. And it's really unfortunate that neither Meaford nor Georgian Bluffs are part of this, because really they're getting a heck of a good deal, or they were. And I think when we do minor sports registration, there's going to be a great awakening amongst our neighbors.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd have a very real concern of us taking an ad or doing any publicity telling Georgian Bluffs and Meaford residents what their councillors are doing. I don't think we would want those councils telling our residents anything that we're doing, and I think we're on a pretty dangerous path here. The decision is made by their council, the same as it is by our council. There may be lots of questions out there, and that's fine. People can ask questions, but for us to do anything to alert those other municipalities as to what's going on, I think is wrong. I think we need to look after our own home and let those other two councils deal with their residents the way that they need to deal with them.
Councillor Boddy.
Thank you. My father used to use a term, something like flogging a dead horse, and I'm starting to feel uncomfortable with flogging this horse any further. Through the recreation program, we're getting the message out to the sports groups that are in contact with the families. I don't think an ad in the paper is going to hit the target as well as what we've already hit it. Spending money on it to do a shotgun approach to get the message out, I think we're past the time that we need to do that or should be doing that, or I don't think we should be spending the money at this point. I think we should be moving on to our next issue that we need to deal with.
Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you. It just occurs to me that minor sports and minor sports registration depends on volunteers, and perhaps we could just invite members of Meaford and Georgian Bluffs Council to volunteer at minor sports registration to help register the young people from their municipality when we do this in February.
I'll go to Councillor Adair.
I take all of that. That's kind of why I threw that out there. I was not suggesting, however, that we tell people what the other councils were doing. I was suggesting that we take the information we already have about what we're doing and let our citizens know that. I was not suggesting in any way that we, I can't tell anybody what or why the reasons of Georgian Bluffs or Meaford were. We don't know. I wasn't suggesting that that's what we do. So I'm satisfied with that. I know we're going to have those sheets there. I do know that we do struggle with getting our message out, and we often talk about the fact that we don't communicate very well. There was an excellent piece in the paper that, although was somewhat friendly to the city, did blast us for the first 5 paragraphs about how poorly we communicate our message. We certainly, I think, have done an excellent job with the rec agreement. We haven't always done that with other things, which I will move on to my third point. And I know the city manager is going to tell me that
we do have a motion on the floor, so we should.
Was it recognized?
No, it wasn't. Let's move along.
I'm prepared to move along, Your Worship, to my next point. That very well laid out fact sheet leads me to think that it would be very handy to have a very similar one for where does all the money I pay to the City of Owen Sound go? Recently, we've certainly heard quite a bit. I pay $3,000 to the city every year, and I don't get my street plowed. Well, you don't actually pay. The check might be written to the City of Owen Sound, but the City of Owen Sound does not get $3,000 of that check, and it would be certainly nice to have a sheet similar to the one that we had for the rec agreement that shows here's the portion that the county gets, here's the portion that's the education tax, here's what's left at the city. Half of that then covers emergency services, and break it down, maybe not too much, but that the city's not getting that entire pot. And of that pie, the discretionary part of that's even less. I mean, I think it would be, and I think we have most of that information. We see it at budget.
Is this a motion, Councillor Adair?
This would be a motion.
This is a motion that is recognized as a motion.
That we ask staff to prepare a similar information sheet to the rec agreement sheet on taxes and where municipal taxes and where that goes within the city, and education, I think, staff know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay. Discussion. Councillor Purdon.
I think that's a really good idea, and I support the motion. I wonder if we could include also the information that was presented at the budget meeting about the rate of taxes for residences in Owen Sound being the second from the bottom in terms of tax rate for cities of our size. I think that was the figure, but we're doing so well on taxes compared to other communities of our size, and I think our public needs to know that.
City Manager.
We will draft something. I'm not suggesting I'm going to have consensus on the draft, however. And it is important, one of the things we did, I think, well on the recreation information sheet was keep it tight.
Mm-hmm.
So it won't be all things.
My motion is you pay this much, this portion goes to the county, this portion goes to education, this portion goes to the city. The city portion, you can then break down somewhat, even if you broke it down, 50% of that goes to emergency services. What the city has to do with all other services is this, is 11 cents of the dollar that you paid. That's what I'm looking for in something that's very.
We will, but.
Councillor Dare, is Councillor Dare, are you leaving this with staff to produce? And do you want the draft to come back here, or do you want it to simply?
It's all facts. I think we have seen most of this.
They are factual.
Yeah.
It is factual data, so.
It's either 11% or it's 12%. So.
So council will see the final. Not a draft. Yes.
Well, I don't think we need to see the final draft. We've got staff hired that's quite capable. If we start managing every little thing, as I think Councillor Adair is saying, he doesn't want to see the draft.
No, it's.
I just wanted to hear those words very clearly, because that would slow the process down.
I'm
say that more clearly.
Thank you.
I have no interest in seeing a draft. I think that 48% is 48%, and the only thing we might comment on is what color the pieces of the pie should be, and we could be here for hours doing that.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Two items. One quick one, just to highlight, there's a fundraising event on Thursday, January 24th at the Frog Pond for the Mackenzie Blues Band. They are going to Memphis to compete for Canada in a blues competition. So I throw that out to January 24th at the Frog Pond for the Mackenzie Blues Band, fundraiser 7 till 9. My second item, since we're talking about elections in 2014, involves the process and how we select our county councillor. I've discussed this with a few of you over the years, and since we're talking about 2014 elections, I might as well ask about it now. I'm wondering if we could get a staff report on the process on how our county councillor, well, I think we're all pretty clear on how it's selected now, how other municipalities select them. It's my understanding there are many different ways to do it, and my concern being there was an election for county councillor in the very first one, and there hasn't been an election since. There's been acclamations all the way along. And I'm concerned with that. There's been, there'll be 14 years before there's been an election for that position. It's been acclaimed. And I understand that other municipalities have other ways of selecting their county councillor, and I'd like to know what those ways are, and council can then make a decision if they want to stick with the status quo or go with some other option. So my request is a report from the clerk on how that would, on that exact issue.
That's the motion. We're clear on that? Councillor Wright.
I just speak to that. The data information is available. It's available at the county, so somebody can get that pretty easy. We're the only area that has a city-county councillor and not a deputy mayor's position. Everybody else that sits around this table is either a mayor or a deputy mayor, except the city of Owen Sound. Titles have never bothered me. at all. I don't care. I sit up here, but doesn't matter to me what I'm called. However, there is a difference, and the city is losing out on a number of things because lots of times the mayor and the deputy mayor are invited to Queen's Park to briefings, information sessions, etc. City County Councilor isn't invited. And we would be, I don't know whether you would include it, but we would be further ahead if we called this position, or if we had the position of deputy mayor rather than city county councilor. I know the drawback to that is that deputy mayor sort of is a position that needs to fill in for the mayor. And we all, like everybody normally likes to take a time of having the month of mayor. But we should really consider that. And I have been contemplating before my retirement, which is going to be in 2014, to make that motion that this position be called the deputy mayor rather than the city county councilor. That may make a difference in the election of it. So that might be something that they might consider.
Certainly when thanks to Councillor Wright for that, I certainly hadn't contemplated that, but I think that's a valid discussion. I know early in my first term we had a discussion around that, and some of the points you just raised are why it didn't move forward, but by all means, let's look at that too. That should all be part of the comprehensive report. If that's the deputy mayor, I think it should be part of the report, so certainly I'd include that in there.
Okay. Councillor Adair.
I can't remember if there was an early report, because I do know when we sort of got into when we rejoined the county and we had the county council position, we had a very long debate about whether or not we were going to have a deputy mayor. And we certainly discussed there didn't seem to be any advantages at that time, and certainly what Councillor Wright has said seems to be a fairly big advantage, but we did talk about what that would mean for the rest of councillors and the thought that, well, the deputy mayor is the next person to become the mayor, et cetera, and we shied away from that. So I'm not sure if there's a report or if that was simply a debate and a discussion that took place, but we have done this, and so if there is any report or discussion from that time, it might be helpful to bring that forward, just so we're not I mean, it's 10 years on, but why reinvent the wheel? Now, again, it may have just been a motion and there was 45 minutes of discussion that wasn't really ever recorded, but.
Okay, good discussion. To the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Did you have any other item, Councillor McMahon? Okay, thank you. Councillor Purdon.
Yes, on Saturday when it was 12 degrees Celsius and I was gardening, I went for a bike ride and down to the water at the Bay Shore, and I was really shocked to see the low level of the water. I had read a report saying it's at its lowest levels since they've been recording the lake levels. So I certainly was aware of it kind of in my mind, but when you start to see that, it really strikes home. So I would like to find some way of bringing this important issue for our city and for our citizens forward so that we can have a look at the implications of low water levels for our city, for our harbor, for our use of the harbor lands, but also for the future of our city. Get started with that conversation. I know Dick Hibma was here, who has a great deal of expertise as well to offer. I think our community needs to know more about the facts, hear more. We as councillors, I think, have a responsibility to start that conversation, that community conversation. So I just bring that forward in terms of a strategy. I would like to see a strategy, how we as a council can engage our community on a conversation about the harbor and the use of the harbor and the way the water levels are impacting our community.
That's your motion?
Yes.
Okay. There is a position in the city of environmental and waste management officer. There is an individual that has the title that has environmental in it. Chris Hughes is that person.
We used to have a committee, but we disbanded that committee.
Council chose to, yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Lemon?
Yes, Your Worship. There is a fair amount of expertise available through the Conservation Authority. And I think the first thing that needs to happen is we need to talk to them, because there are people there who follow it very, very closely, and I think have the expertise that would assist in this. Plus, there are a number of organizations, one of which is the Georgian Bay Alliance, the citizens group that contracted for the Baird report. And those are some of the people we should be talking to, because it's not quite as, there's no simple solution, but I think we have to start doing something now.
Councillor Dare.
Thank you, Your Worship. On this issue specifically, we do pay a very large levy into the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. We had Mr. Hibma here tonight, who actually has a connection with the International Joint Commission. Perhaps we can ask the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority to prepare this report. That seems to be much more their expertise and bailiwick than it is ours. If we're talking about the greater issue around the harbor itself and the issues of dredging and stuff, I think that's maybe something we can do. But the why the lake levels are going down is not, it's an issue that affects Owen Sound, but it's not an Owen Sound specific issue, of which, you know, we don't have people on staff who handle those sorts of things. But we do have an organization we pay money to and belong to and have a member on that that could answer a lot of those questions around the lake levels. But the broader issue of the harbor, I think it was time we had some kind of public report on that.
I go to Councillor Purdon.
So I wasn't specifically looking for a report, but certainly to start to look at the implications for our community and to start to engage our community in that conversation. So certainly the Conservation Authority is a big part of that in terms of expertise. There's probably other expertise here in our staff as well that have a lot of information about impact and implications for our city, other stakeholders in our community. So I think it's not a report, but more of an engagement strategy and a communication strategy as well with our citizens.
Councillor Lemon?
Well, two things. Number one, the reason the Grey Sauble would be very good is, don't forget, they also have Sauble, which, I mean, eventually I've forgotten the name of that place on the sands just near the entrance, the place where you can get French fries and fish and stuff. It's going to be about half a mile away from the water this year. And it's really a serious problem throughout our whole area. And the reason why I suggested the Grey Sauble is let them worry about the lake effect, and economic development is the one that's affected by the harbor, economic development and tourism.
Councillor Body.
Just trying to figure out who, what budget, what department, which employee we're going to dump this onto. Bad choice of words on my part. I'm sounding maybe a little too negative, but we don't have the resources to take on something that really doesn't fall squarely into the bailiwick of our municipal duties. I understand that the conversation maybe needs to happen somewhere in the community, but I don't think it's our responsibility. We don't have the budget unless we're going to increase the budget. And boy, if we dump one more thing onto economic development, it's becoming this really big round thing that with one employee, they can't keep up to half the stuff we've put in his plate already. It's just not fair to keep adding to economic development. And I don't see anywhere else running my mind through our list of employees and departments where it's going to fit. I just don't think it's our responsibility.
City Manager?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the good conversation. I've been around this issue since my days in Simcoe County, and in large part this issue has been championed by ratepayer organizations and cottage associations throughout Georgian Bay and the lakes. I think well, we can certainly at a staff level tell you there will be impacts. We have no ability to truly measure those impacts. And I think at the end of the day, this is a broader regional issue that requires a more regional approach through organizations such as the Conservation Authority and the county and some of the Great Lakes organizations. Owen Sound is somewhat unique in that we don't have as large a number of residential impacts as other communities do. And that's what's driven this issue in other communities where there is a significant impact to residential owners, and where they have taken and done an excellent lobbying job through their ratepayer associations and through their cottage associations. They've got the resources that we don't have at this level. I think I would agree with Councillor Boddy that this issue will flounder somewhat at our Economic Development Committee level. I could certainly do a report that through just almost common sense says there's going to be an impact on the harbor, there's going to be an impact on our marine operators, there's going to be those impacts. I don't have any ability, however, to give you the finite numbers on those and to measure that. So I would agree that perhaps the better bang for the better approach may be to raise it to a higher level where you can get more resources addressing this.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I think that this is an issue that's even greater than the City of Owen Sound. I think this has a huge, if we lose the harbor, that would have a huge impact on agriculture in the area as well. And so I think probably there's others out there that we can sort of get them to endorse a position on it and maybe go through the county. It has great impact, and the county has an economic development committee, has staff. So, we could perhaps use them and get to the OFMA and start, because I think the city manager is right. I think we're going to have to start not just whining, but start screaming and get something to be done here.
Councillor Boddy? No? Okay. Councillor Twaddle.
There is an informal organization as well, Your Worship, that Mr. Hibma made a reference to, and it's the Shoreline Initiative, which is municipalities around the Georgian Bay shoreline. We were involved. I attended a couple of meetings in Wasaga Beach. Mayor Ellen Anderson from the town of the Blue Mountains is very active in it, and I mean, that's one of the organizations that Mr. Hibma made reference to, and they're working on a lot of shoreline initiatives, including the effect of lower water, but also other issues around development along the shoreline. So that may be another area where this conversation can be taken.
Good discussion. Councillor Purdon.
So certainly the intent of the motion or this conversation is to bring all of those bits together. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of expertise, there's needs that we've already identified and future needs that maybe we're not aware of, but we need to be aware of. So I think that was the intent. We're not going to solve the problem of low lake levels or anything like that. It's a very complex issue. I think there is certainly a role for our council to be playing.
Sure. And I think what comes to mind, at first blush is clearly the concerns that we have as a community around the dredging of the inner harbor, and pushing that towards Transport Canada to say, you have a harbor here. Now it's not only is it silting in rapidly, but also it's compounded by the problem of low water levels. And when we compound it, that's a real problem for the city of Owen Sound and for the county of Grey and for the region. It's a huge issue for this municipality. And somebody said we need to start screaming. Well, we will start screaming, and we're starting screaming now. As 2013, it is time to scream. And Transport Canada has to step up to the plate sooner or later and take responsibility for their harbor and make it workable. This can't be emphasized enough. The low lake levels are certainly emphasizing it. We have a tall ships rendezvous, which is happening next summer, which we've already heard we've sold hundreds and hundreds of tickets to in advance. My hope is that the water levels stay at a point where there is enough draft to accommodate these ships. And I can tell you, if Transport Canada doesn't do a dredge soon, if one of those ships gets stuck, it will be Transport Canada who will be getting the bill to help pull it out. So having said that, I am not speaking to the motion directly, but I will call the question.
Just one comment.
Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, we have two representatives of County Council, as you're certainly aware. And I think Councillor Wright's suggestion that this really, the level that needs to be yelling loudest is the county.
And we'll certainly be bringing that message with us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All those in favor? The motion? We need clarification on the motion, the clerk's asking.
Well, it's kind of wandered around with conversation, so well, we can make it to take these concerns forward to the county council and to look for strategies to engage our community in addressing the impact of the state of the harbor and on our local economy. I'm just, to get it started, I think that's what we're doing.
Sure. Okay, so are we clear on the motion, Council? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. I think that as we move forward, when we talk about global warming and climate change and so on, they really are so far out of our mandate to handle. We don't have the scientific expertise to handle it. But what we can handle, and what we see our various associations handling, is how municipalities are dealing with climate change and the incredibly odd winters we're having and low lake levels and so on and so forth. So I think those are things that are specific that we as a municipality can certainly speak to. Okay, we have Mr. McRoberts. You had an additional item.
My additional item was taken care of when Councillor Body brought forward both those motions.
Okay. Madam Clerk, you had an additional item as well. Great. Thank you, sir. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We have resolution adopting proceedings in committee of the whole, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wright, that the actions taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be hereby confirmed by this council.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. I would like to just take one little bit of license and congratulate the art gallery on an incredible opening yesterday. I did see city manager and Councillor Body and his family, and there were just, I would say, around 200 people that, at the very least, that attended. That attended the opening. It was phenomenal. If you have not had a chance to get into the gallery to see some of the most amazing, now if I were to say to you they're paperweights, that would be the most understated description I could give you. These pieces are phenomenal, and anyone would find them fascinating. If you've never been to the gallery, this is a great time to go to the gallery and check it out, because these little paperweights, which are all glass, are phenomenal. As well as there's a Lauren Wagman exhibit, which is phenomenal, a local artist, beyond talented. I think we are on to another scale of Tom Thompson, to be quite frank with you, and the people that were there from the GTA, and they were identifying some extremely valuable pieces. I have to also say there was an exhibit from a woman who was basically doing her an exposition on the world through the eyes of her daughter, who has autism. And it was an interactive display. So if you have children, particularly kids of all ages, but younger kids in particular, they're really interesting pieces because they can interact with them. And so I look over to a couple of counselors over here who have some younger kids, and those with grandchildren. It's a really neat exhibit, and I would really encourage you to take a little bit of time and go through. So congratulations to all at the gallery for that great show as well. And having said that, welcome back. We're a little bit clunky tonight on the procedure, and I'll sharpen my pencil up next time. Motion to approve the bylaws? We did that.
We didn't?
No.
All those in favor of the bylaws? Oh my gosh. Yes. Let's read them first. Oh, this is just awful. I'm just so embarrassed.
Your Worship, I'd assume there's no notices of motion and no new business by resolution. And assuming each of that, then we'll get to number 18.
God, Lord.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wright that bylaw numbers 2013-001, 002 inclusive be hereby passed and enacted.
Thank you. Now we'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. We're adjourned.